why does the Lord ask the devotee to offer prayers? Can anyone tell me? Why would the Lord ask somebody, glorify me? Sounds pretty self-indulgent, doesn't it? He just calls everybody, come and glorify me. Can you tell me why? Anyone tell me? Yes.
Because devotees, they like to pray.
Yes, that's true. Huh?
Taste the devotion.
What's that?
Wants to,
Taste the devotion? The devotee. He wants the devotee
the
to
Lord wants
to taste their devotion. Yes, that's also very true. That's exactly true. Although I was going to say it in a different way. I was going to say it because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he refers, in his commentary, he refers to the verse in the Srimad Bhagavata, where it was Prahlad Maharaj. Somebody's looking in this window. Probably he's looking to come find out. He refers to that verse. Well, he refers to two verses. He refers to the verse, if one offers me a fruit, flower, leaf, and water with love and devotion, I accept that offering. He refers to that verse from the Bhagavad Gita. And he refers to the verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prahlad Maharaj describes that the Lord doesn't need anything, but he's inclined to accept the offering from a devotee for the benefit of the devotee. And he gives the example that just as when a person decorates his face in the mirror, then simultaneously the reflection is decorated. He doesn't have to decorate the reflection independent from his own face. So in the same way that when somebody offers something to the Lord, it's not that the Lord is benefiting, we're benefiting. So when the Lord says, offer prayers to me, it's not that the Lord needs, like a politician who says, vote for me. Or feels a little bit uneasy about his status. He wants to make sure everybody... The more people glorify me, the more I feel better about being God. Or I'll feel more secure in being God. It's not that he needs anything for himself when he asks the devotee to glorify him. When he asks the devotee to glorify him, it's actually for the devotee's benefit. As the example is given, that when one decorates his face in the mirror, then the reflection is simultaneously decorated. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta actually refers to that verse here. So he tells Sridhar, please glorify me. And Sridhar says, I don't have no qualification. I'm not learned. How is it possible to glorify you? Ananta Shesha has been chanting your glories, reciting your glories with each of his mouths for all of eternity. And still he hasn't reached the limit of your glory. What can I say worthy of your glorification? And then Lord Caitanya says, just speak whatever words you speak, whatever comes out of your mouth. It doesn't make any difference. It will be accepted by me. He even said the same thing to Murari Gupta. Lord Caitanya went to the house of Murari Gupta. He was in the mood of Varahadev. And he entered into Murari's temple room, and as Nimai Pandit, and then all of a sudden he assumed the form of Varaha, and he lifted up a water pot on his tusks, and he turned to Murari, and this is his first time he disclosed his identity to Murari Gupta. Previously he was always a young, arrogant Brahmin Nimai Pandit. So he said to Murari, what do you think of this, Murari? And he manifested this form of Lord Varahadev. And Murari Gupta was looking at him, And then he said, say some prayers, say something. And Maharaj Gupta says the same thing. He said, who knows you better than you yourself? What can I possibly say to glorify you? And Lord Chaitanya said, whatever words you say, I'll accept them as perfect. Just say something. And he just spoke a few words, and the Lord was so pleased with Maharaj Gupta's prayers. A few simple words. So he said the same thing to Sridhar. He says, please offer some prayers to me. And Sridhar is taking the same position. I have no qualification. What can I do? He didn't think, I like the Digvijay Pandit, what was his name? Keshava Kashmiri, who was renowned throughout all of India. The goddess of he had worshipped the goddess Saraswati, and she appeared on his tongue. And whenever but he was very proud, and he was like the all-conquering Digvijay. He would go from one village to the next, and he would sit down and engage in debate. And because he had worshipped goddess Saraswati, she appeared on his tongue, and he would be able to recite eloquent verses immediately from memory. He would be able to immediately compose on the spot eloquent verses, and he would engage in debate. And anyone who tried to debate him, he would immediately defeat him on the basis of scripture. And then after he defeated them, he had his Jayapatra, and he said, okay, you sign here so I can show that I've defeated you. And he would go from one place to the next showing his Jayapatra, and people would become so afraid that they wouldn't even debate with him. After seeing his Jayapatra, they say, okay, just put your name down in here. He wanted to be established throughout all of India as the person who was indefeatable in debate. So he was very happy because it was a boost of his own prestige and position. He would speak so eloquently. He would recite hundreds of slokas, and at the slightest opportunity, he had no qualms about speaking in this. And it was, Goddess Saraswati was fulfilling his desire. But at the same time, when Keshava Kashmiri came before Nimai Pandit, and it's described also how, as we already explained, in Navadvip, all the very learned pandits and scholars and those who were engaged in debate, it was a seat of that place. And when they heard about Keshava Kashmiri coming to Navadvip, they all became very concerned. Who's going to defeat him? If he defeats everyone in Navadvip, then the whole reputation of Navadvip will be destroyed. This is the center of learning. This is the center of debate. We have to defeat him. Who will defeat him? And they approached Nimai Pandit, and they said, you're qualified to defeat him. So, of course, Lord Chaitanya did defeat him, but he defeated him in such a way that when Keshava Kashmiri came before him, and Lord Chaitanya asked him, please recite verses in glorification of the Ganges, and then Keshava Kashmiri spoke for 3 continuous hours, composed 100 verses in glorification of the Ganges. And Lord Chaitanya just listened to everything. And he said, after hearing, he said, this is wonderful. He said, can you please now explain the meaning of each of these verses? And then Keshava Kashmiri started explaining, and then Lord Chaitanya picked out a slight defect in one of the verses that he had. And then 3 verses. He pointed out 3 defects. And then Keshava Kashmiri, he became totally bewildered. He couldn't speak. When Lord Chaitanya was asking, please now explain, support your arguments for the usage that you gave in these verses, for the grammar and nothing would come out of his mouth. And he said, I've never been bewildered like this before. How is it possible? I can immediately recite thousands of verses. I've defeated all the scholars and pandits throughout India. How is it possible that nothing will come out of my mouth? And Nimai Pandit he was being very careful. He didn't want to defeat him publicly in such a way that he would leave his body. Because some of these pandits, they're so proud, if they're defeated, they would actually give up their life. Their life heirs would leave their body because of distress at being defeated. So Nimai Pandit was very careful. He would never defeat anybody in such a way that would cause them to, embarrassment or insult. So he told him, he said, when Keshava Kashmiri couldn't speak, he said, why don't you just go home and think about it tonight? And come back tomorrow and we can talk more about it. So the Digvijay Pandit left that place. He went to his home, or wherever he was staying in Navadvip at the time, and he fell asleep, and that night Goddess Saraswati appeared to him in a dream. And she explained that I could not speak in the presence of Nimai Pandit because wherever the Lord is present, I cannot stand in front of him. I must always stand behind him. So therefore you had no words. You could not speak because I did not appear in your tongue. Because you were doing it for your own prestige. If you were doing it for glorifying the Lord, I would have come. But because you were simply doing it for your own prestige, I could not agree to appear in your tongue. So therefore, she explained that nobody could possibly defeat you at any time. Therefore, you must accept that this scholar, Nimai Pandit, is none other than the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tomorrow you must go before him and you must prostrate yourself before him and you must surrender to him. So Goddess Saraswati revealed all this to him in the dream, and he realized, of course, that great mistake that he had done. So the point we were making is that these scholars who are puffed up, they can recite so many verses and are based on pride for their own prestige, but there's a difference. The devotee is never proud of his knowledge. He's never thinks that he knows so much about God. He thinks he doesn't know anything. And when the Supreme Lord says, offer prayers to me, then Kolavecha says, I'm just a simple, banana leaf seller. What can I possibly say to glorify you? And what happened? The Lord said, Sridhar offered prayers to me. Sridhar replied, O Lord, I am most foolish. I have no ability to offer any prayers. The Lord then said, your words alone are prayers to me. By the order of the Lord, Saraswati, the mother of the universe, appeared on Sridhar's tongue, and Sridhar began to offer prayers. So, see, Saraswati then appeared before Sridhar, because Sridhar had the devotion. She would appear, she agreed to appear there because Sridhar felt himself to be unworthy and had complete devotion to the Lord, where she did not appear on the tongue of the Keshava Kashmiri in the presence of the Lord, because Keshava Kashmiri was only interested in his own prestige. Then he began offering prayers. And I'll read them. All glories to Mahaprabhu. All glories to Vishvambara. All glories to the Lord of Navadvip. All glories to the Lord of innumerable universes. All glories to he who was born from the womb of the pious mother Sachi. All glories to the Lord who is unknown to the Vedas. All glories to the best of the Brahmins. You assume various forms in every age to protect religious principles. You wandered throughout the city unknown to all. Who can know you unless you reveal yourself? You are Dharma, you are Karma, you are Bhakti, and you are Jnana. You are the scriptures, you are the Vedas, and you are the object of all meditation. You are the mystic perfections. You are prosperity. You are enjoyment, and you are yoga. You are faith. You are compassion. You are illusion and greed. You are Indra. You are Chandra. You are Agni and Varuna. You are Surya. You are Vayu. You are wealth and strength. You are devotional service. You are liberation, you are Brahma and Shiva, but why consider you to be them? They are all subordinate to you. Previously, you personally told me the water of your Ganges has emanated from my feet. Quote, previously you told me, this is Nimai speaking, the water of your Ganges has emanated from my feet. Yet neither did my sinful heart recognize you, nor did I understand the glories of your invaluable lotus feet. It was you who made the town of Gokul glorious, and now you have appeared as the king of Navadvip. You conceal devotional service within your body, but you have manifested that devotional service in Navadvip. It was through devotional service that Bhishma conquered you on the battlefield, and it was through devotional service that Yasoda bound you. For a description of Bhishma's and Yasoda's devotional service, see the purport to Adikanda. So, how did Bhishma conquer the Lord? Anyone tell me? Huh? No.
At the time of death, when he was ready to die, or something? He was
Making him angry on the battlefield.
That's right.
Yes. Making him pick up a weapon. Right? He conquered them. And he said, to fulfill my promise, you broke your promise. So that's the power of the devotee. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gives two examples here. He gives the example of Bhishma, and he also gives the example of Yasoda. Yasoda conquered Krishna because, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in his commentary to the pastime of Yasoda binding Krishna to a rope, that Krishna, the reason why Mother Yasoda's rope was always 2 fingers too short is because Krishna did not want to be bound. Because he wanted to continue to play with his friends, and he wanted to continue to steal yogurt. So that's what his desire was. Now he's God. Certainly he can do whatever he wants to do. So Mother Yasoda, she wanted to chastise her son and bind him up and punish him to the wooden grinding mortar. And she also wanted to make sure he didn't get into any further mischief. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Krishna manifested 2 potency, his Satya Sankalpa Shakti and his Vibhuti Shakti. The Satya Sankalpa Shakti is the potency of the Lord which fulfills each and every one of his desires. Whatever the Lord wants, Satya Sankalpa Shakti will fulfill that desire. And his Vibhuti Shakti is a manifestation of his something very wonderful, like he describes his Vibhutis in the Bhagavad Gita, his opulences, which are how he can be recognized in this world. So something very wonderful which manifested by his Vibhuti Shakti was, no matter how many ropes Yasoda added to the rope around his waist, it still couldn't bind him. That was very mystical. So these 2 potency manifested so that Yasoda couldn't bind him. But Krishna was conquered by Yasoda. Yasoda was so intent on binding her son, and her motherly affection was so intense, and she was laboring so hard to bind him. Perspiration was coming from her face, and that Krishna's heart melted at seeing the intense desire for Yasoda to bind him. And when his heart totally melted like soft butter, his Kripa Shakti manifested, his mercy potency. And that mercy potency caused these 2 other potencies, the Vibhuti Shakti and the Satya Sankalpa Shakti, to leave his body. And he was defeated. Even though he wanted to continue to play with his friends, he wanted to continue to steal butter, Mother Yasoda said, no, I want to bind you, and that's it, you're not going anywhere. And she won. She defeated him. She was able to bind him. So It was through devotional service that Bhishma conquered you on the battlefield. Bhishma the same way. Bhishma made a vow that unless Krishna himself stops me with each one of these 5 arrows, I will kill the Pandavas. Unless Krishna himself interferes. Although Krishna had made a vow, he would take no weapon in battle. But to maintain Bhishma's vow, Bhishma conquered Krishna and forced him to break his own promise. So Bhishma broke his own promise, lifted up the chariot wheel, and began running after Bhishma, using the chariot wheel as a weapon. And that famous painting we see Arjuna, he's holding on to Krishna. And what is Arjuna saying to Krishna? Do you know what Prabhupada says Arjuna is saying to Krishna when he's holding on, trying to obstruct Krishna from running? Prabhupada explains, Arjuna is telling Krishna, Krishna, don't do this. Don't break your promise. If you break your promise, who will, how people will accept you? Let him kill me. That's what Arjuna was actually saying to Bhishma. Let him kill me. Better I be killed than you break your promise. And therefore he's holding on to Krishna's leg. But Krishna shows his willingness to protect his devotee. Right? He's doing both. He's protecting both Arjuna and Bhishma. He's protecting Arjuna because he won't let Bhishma kill him with that arrow. And he's protecting Bhishma by protecting his promise. So that Bhishma's promise will not have to be broken. So he was conquered. And this is how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the Bhakta Vatsalya or the Sevaka Vatsalya, the reciprocation of the Lord is that he allows himself to be conquered by his devotee. He likes to be conquered by his devotee. But only a devotee can conquer him. Anyone else who attempts to conquer the Lord will never be successful in their endeavors, because it's only by unalloyed love by which the Lord can be conquered. Just like there's another pastime when Ishwar Puri, when he asked Lord Caitanya Ishwar Puri was reciting every day his Krishna Karnamrita that he had composed in glorification of Krishna. And he was reading it for Gadadhar Pandit. And every day young Nimai Pandit would come and he would hear the recitation of Krishna Karnamrita from Ishwar Puri. And Ishwar Puri one time said to Nimai, he said, certainly you've been coming every night, you've been hearing my recitation of Krishna Karnamrita, you're an expert scholar, grammarian, philosopher, certainly you must have found some fault in my scripture, that in my composition, can you please point out some fault? And Lord Chaitanya said, whoever finds fault with the words of a devotee is himself the offender. He's at fault. Because a devotee can never make any mistake in his words or glorification of the Lord. And so I can't find any fault in your Krishna Karnamrita. So he took that position, but he kept on coming back and hearing, and then one day he said to Ishwar Puri, he said, I just found some fault. I'm going to point it out to you about this grammar verse. About the grammar that you used in this verse. Some word, I can't remember the word. But he pointed out what he thought was a defect. So, and Ishwar Puri listened to what he had to say, and then Nimai left and said, I'll come back tomorrow. Ishwar Puri studied that defect all night long, found substantial evidence to support the usage of the word. And then when Nimai returned the next day, Ishwar Puri gave his explanation to Nimai and defeated Nimai and told him that you were wrong in finding fault. in that grammar. What I gave was right. And he gave a whole explanation of how it was right. And he defeated Lord Caitanya. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says, this is the nature of the Lord. The Lord likes to be defeated by his devotee. Although previously nobody could defeat Nimai Pandit. Nobody. He would sometimes sit down and engage in argument. He would defeat somebody and it would establish his argument. And then after establishing his argument, he would say, okay, do you accept my defeat? And the person would say, yes, it's the truth. Or can I say you've defeated me? He said, now I'm going to defeat my own argument. And then he would defeat his own argument, offer another argument, and prove how his previous argument, which the devotee had already accepted as the absolute truth, accepted, yes, was the actual fact. He proved him how it was a defect. And he said, oh, and how did he do that? How did he? And he would establish a new argument and said, now you accept? I have to accept it. It's perfect. And then he would defeat that and establish another argument. So he was such a perfect, logician. He could defeat any argument, even his own arguments, and establish a conclusive truth. Nobody had ever defeated him. But he likes to be defeated by his devotee. So Ishvara Puri defeated him. So this is how, as Vrindavan Das Thakur is explaining, you conceal devotional service within your body, but you have manifested that devotional service in Navadvip. It was through devotional service that Bhishma conquered you on the battlefield, and it was through devotional service that Yasoda bound you. It was through devotional service that Satyabhama sold you. Being controlled by devotional service, you carried a cowherd damsel of Vraj on your shoulders. You who are carried in the minds of the inhabitants of innumerable universes personally carried the cowherd boy Sridham. You are conquered by devotional service. Therefore, it is most confidential. Ordinary people do not understand this. You are always conquered by devotional service. You therefore hid devotional service and wander around like a conqueror. This characteristic of yours is now shattered and inactive. Just see, the entire world hankers for your devotional service. So he's saying, previously, you hid devotional service, and you always wandered about as if you could conquer and defeat everybody. This is Kolavitya Sridhar's prayer. Right? He was the conqueror. When the Muslims were invading Navadvip and they were coming to arrest everyone who was engaged in the kirtan, all the devotees, the Vaishnavas, they were in fear of the invasion. Srivas Pandit went to his home, began worshipping Lord Nrsingadev, to protect the Vaishnavas from the invasion of the Muslims, who were all going to be arrested because an order had been given that nobody should chant these names in public. So, but Lord Caitanya, he was wandering the streets like a lion, and everybody was wondering why is he not afraid? Why is he walking about as if he's that nothing will happen to him? He was appearing as the conqueror. Right? He says, you therefore hid devotional service and wander around like a conqueror. But you are always conquered by devotional service. So this characteristic of yours is now shattered and inactive. Just see now, the entire world is hankering for your devotional service. At that time you were defeated by only 2 or 4 persons, but now you will be bound by one and all. Sridhar is saying that now you've made devotional service so accessible. You've come. Your purpose for your appearance, he's saying now, your purpose of your appearance is to make devotional service so accessible that as soon as everyone has devotion, then they're bound by the Lord. The Lord is bound to them. Like that verse spoken to Yudhishthira Maharaj, that he's glorifying the Pandavas, is saying that I can see that you are very fortunate because Krishna has given you devotional service. Because Krishna is not only your guru, your God, the head of your family, but I can also see he's become your order carrier. He's become your messenger. He says the Lord he will give liberation very easily, but he doesn't give devotional service so easily, because when he gives somebody devotional service, he has to give himself also. So he says, I can see that you're very fortunate. The Lord has become your messenger. He's become your servant. So the Lord Caitanya specifically came to make devotional service so easily accessible in this age of Kali. Although the subject matter of bhakti is very difficult to understand, nonetheless it becomes very easy and understandable and accessible by the mercy of Lord Caitanya. So he says, at that time you were defeated by only 2 or 4 persons, but now you will be bound by one and all. After hearing Sridhar's transcendental prayers, all the exalted Vaishnavas were struck with wonder. The Lord said, O Sridhar, choose and ask for a benediction. Today I will give you the 8 mystic perfections. Sridhar replied, O Lord, will you again deceive me? Stay peaceful, for this will not be possible again. The Lord said, seeing me cannot be fruitless. You must take some benediction according to your desire. Vishwambara repeatedly said, ask, and Sridhar replied, O Lord, then give me this benediction. Let that Brahmin who forcibly took away my banana leaves be my Lord birth after birth. Let me always engage in the service of the lotus feet of that Brahmin who constantly quarreled with me. While speaking in this way, Sridhar's love for the Lord increased, and he began crying loudly with his arms raised. On seeing Sridhar cry, all the Vaishnavas became overwhelmed and also cried. Vishwambara smiled and said, listen, Sridhar, I want to make you the king of a great kingdom. Sridhar replied, I do not want anything. Make such arrangement, O Lord, that I may chant your names. So, there's a lot more commentaries describing how the Lord is defeated by his devotee. The Lord is asking Kolavecha Sridhar, look, you're living in such poverty. Let me make you a king, and let me give you a kingdom. And it's like that example that's given in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, where the Lord is speaking to 9th canto of the Bhagavatam. The Lord is speaking to Durvasa Muni, when Durvasa Muni is appealing to Lord Vishnu to please protect him from the Sudarshan Chakra. And the Lord says, I can't protect you. I'm completely under the control of my devotee. And I'm not independent. And Durvasa Muni says, but when you see a person suffering, then certainly you must feel concerned that you want to relieve the suffering of that person. You're completely independent. And the Lord said, I don't have a mind and I don't have a heart to think about your suffering. I don't even belong to myself. So how can I relieve your suffering? Because I can't even think about your suffering. And then the Lord explains that Maharaj Ambarish is so dear to me because my devotee is such that when the devotee serves me within the core of his heart, because he has no desires within the core of his heart, he's freed from any fruitive desires, I ask him, let me give you a benediction. So whenever I ask my devotee, let me give you a benediction, my devotee always says to me, I don't want anything. Just let me chant your name, just let me serve you. And the Lord says, please let me give you something. This is natural. You've given me so much. You're serving me so nicely. please let me offer something in return. And he says, the devotee, every time I ask him for something, the devotee doesn't want anything except the only benediction he asks for is the opportunity to serve me. So he says, therefore, even though my devotee doesn't ask for this, I still give him something very special. What I give him is I give him my heart. So because I've given Maharaj Ambarish my heart, you're coming to me and asking, have a heart. I don't have one. I don't belong to myself. If you want my heart, you have to go to Maharaj Ambarish. He's got it in his possession. If you want mercy, if you want compassion, go to Ambarish Maharaj. Coming to me does no good. I don't have a heart. He has it in his heart. So the Lord says, that's the power of my devotee. That's how I become conquered. That my devotee controls me, conquers me. He takes the most valuable thing I have in my possession. I can't offer my devotee wealth. He's not interested. I can't offer him a position. He's not interested. How will that be pleasing to him? So I have to offer him something that's most valuable. So I give him my heart. So here, this is the example. Nimai is saying, Lord Caitanya is saying to Kolavecha Shraddha, ask a benediction. Oh Lord, he said, let me always engage in the service of your lotus feet. Let that Brahma who forcibly took away my banana leaves be my Lord, birth after birth. And then Lord Chaitanya says, listen, Shraddha, I want to make you a king of a great kingdom. Shraddha replied, I do not want anything. Make such arrangement, O Lord, that I may chant your names. The Lord said, O Shraddha, you are my servant. That is why you are able to see my opulences. That is why your mind does not deviate from me. Thus I am giving you devotional service that is confidential to the Vedas. So here the Lord is, of course, Kolavecha Shraddha already had devotional service, but he shows by this example how the Lord becomes bound. He gives devotional service. He gives the gift, the greatest boon, the greatest benediction is unalloyed love. That is the greatest treasure, that is the greatest wealth for the devotee. And therefore, as described in the Bhagavatam, that the Lord is very dear to those devotees who have no material possessions, but are fully satisfied in possessing only devotional service to Krishna. Indeed, the Lord becomes bound to such devotees. And he says, the verse also goes on to say that generally persons who are proud of their aristocracy, being puffed up by their wealth, their power, aristocracy, great heritage, they will oftentimes deride, they'll make fun of devotees of the Lord. They think the devotee has nothing external to show for all of his so-called devotion. Look at this Shraddha, for all of his so-called howling at night, he's just, what does he have to show? He still lives in poverty. He still has holes in his roof. He still has holes in his clothes. And he screams all night long in hunger. What does he have to show for all this so-called devotion? They deride devotees of the Lord. They think devotees have nothing of any value. But the Lord shows, and again and again and again, that the only ones who have something of any value to me are my devotees. He said, even millionaires, we just read, in this way the Lord enjoys the gifts of his devotees and does not glance at millions of gifts offered by non-devotees. Doesn't even look at them. He's not interested. It's the devotion. Patram pushpam palam toyam yomai bhakya prayachate. It's the love and devotion. That's what captures the attention of the Lord. Not the external offering. So the Lord bestows, here in this verse, that is why your mind does not deviate from me. Thus I am giving you devotional service that is confidential to the Vedas. All the Vaishnavas chanted Jai Jai as they heard the benediction given to Sridhar. He had no wealth, no followers, and no education. Who can recognize such servants of Lord Chaitanya? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, I'll end in this commentary. It is impossible to identify the characteristics of a Vaishnava by material sense perception or external symptoms. It is not that one who possesses more wealth is a superior Vaishnava. It is not that one who gathers more followers is a superior Vaishnava. It is not that one who has more knowledge of the scriptures is a superior devotee of Vishnu. The servants of Lord Chaitanya may not have much wealth, may not gather many followers, and may not have the academic qualification of being expert in argument and, and counter-argument. But ordinary people have no qualification to understand why they are indifferent to such matters. The devotees consider the service of Sri Chaitanya as superior to wealth, followers, and knowledge. Therefore, it is impossible for ordinary people to estimate their dignity, glories, and greatness. Who can recognize such servants of Lord Chaitanya? He had no wealth, no followers, and no education. So here is the confirmation. We have to be very careful in how we judge or pass judgment. What is the actual criteria for somebody's success in life? What is the greatest success in life? The greatest success in life is to be able to capture the attention of the Lord. Because anyone who once captures the attention of the Lord will never forget. Even the smallest amount of service rendered, the Lord will never forget that devotee. And He'll always remember that devotee. And Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana payupashante tesham nitya bhayoktanam yogakshema vahamyaham. Whatever that devotee may lack, the Lord will carry for him. Whatever the devotee has, the Lord will preserve for him. So the Lord is the ultimate criteria, determines the ultimate criteria of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, what is valuable and what is not valuable. The Lord considers the devotee not on the basis of his knowledge, not on the basis of his followers, not on the basis of his wealth. These things do not capture his attention. So since the Lord establishes the ultimate criteria of a person's success in life, therefore we have to be very, very careful in our own judgment. We oftentimes we experience, unfortunately, even in a society of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada speaks about this in his commentary in the 4th canto of the Bhagavata. He describes that even in the Krishna conscious society, sometimes we may see there is disunity. He said, but there is no disunity in Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, there is there is only unity. So therefore, wherever we may see some disunity, it is due to some material leaning. We're not using the right criteria in our judgments. And we have to be very, very careful to not pass judgment based upon what somebody might do appear to be wrong, because the Lord will correct a person who may externally perform something that appears to be wrong, but He'll correct it and make it right. As we've seen in these different examples, right? As He did with Ishwara Puri, as He did with Kolavecha Sridhar, as He does with His devotee. The devotee may appear to do something wrong that is of the opinion of the general populace. It's wrong. But if that person actually is sincerely trying to please the Lord, whatever it may appear to be wrong will be corrected and ultimately be shown and revealed by the Lord that the devotee is not wrong as long as he's endeavoring to please me. So we have to be very careful to not quickly judge others on the basis of wealth, the basis of followers, on the basis of knowledge, academic knowledge. And it's very difficult sometimes to judge what's in a person's heart. And if we're not careful, we may ourselves, by passing judgment on a person without sufficiently understanding their heart and their motive and their intention, intention, we may become a victim of passing judgment on somebody who's a sincere devotee, and it could cause us our problems in our own devotional service. We may lose our attachment. We may lose our attraction to Krishna consciousness. We may lose our taste for chanting Hare Krishna. We may actually lose the association of devotees. And it may look like some external reason, right? That, because of this, because of that, he did this, she did that, I don't want, it may look like some completely external reason, but actually we may lose the association of devotees because of our inattentiveness in judging others without understanding sufficiently what's in their heart. So one has to be very, very careful, and therefore Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is saying it is impossible to identify the characteristics of a Vaishnava by material sense perception or by external symptoms. This is not our criteria. The Lord knows, of course, because the Lord is in the heart of every living entity. He knows the motive of everyone. And therefore, as being situated in the heart as the super soul, the Lord can understand the intentions of every living entity, past, present, and future. So we should be very careful about imitating the Lord and thinking that we know everything about a person's motivations. And where, in fact, we may be passing judgment based upon our own impure motivations. And that's exactly the point that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta made when he said that the persons were finding fault with Kolavecha Sridhar, criticizing him for his loud chanting, which was done feelingly, which was done for his own benefit and purification and for the benefit of others. Whereas others were saying, look, we chant, we recite, we speak about Krishna, we speak the Bhagavata. I'm better. I'm better. But it's not the external things which is the criteria. It's the heart. It's the heart, the motivation. So even Bhagavat Bhakti Hinasya Jati Shastram Japastapa Apranasyeva Dehana Mandanam Loka Ranjanam. For a person who's devoid of devotional service, even if he is expert at chanting Vedic mantras, even if he takes birth in a great family of nature, even if he performs all kinds of austerities, this verse describes that all these things that a person has are considered to be like ornaments on a dead body. They simply serve the concocted pleasures of the general populace. Oh, I could recite so many slokas, I could rattle them off. But if a person is devoid of devotion within the heart, it's like an ornament on a dead body. What is the value of an ornament on a dead body? Or if one takes birth chanting Vedic mantras, performs severe austerities, someone can perform very severe austerities, sleep only a couple of hours a night, and eat very little. But Lord Caitanya established by that brahmachari, that Brahmin who only ate a few roots and drank a little milk, and he thought that his austerities were sufficient that he would be allowed to enter into Lord Chaitanya's kirtan. And he would come every day to Srivas Pandit, and he would say, beg him, please, I'm a austere Brahmin. Let me in. Let me see this kirtan. And Srivas allowed him into the kirtan by his persistence. And then one night during the kirtan, when the Brahmin was hiding, the brahmachari was hiding in some place, Lord Chaitanya said, "There's somebody in this room who's not a devotee." because I'm not feeling the same ecstasy I always feel. And Srivas Pandit immediately stood out, and he said, oh, but he's austere. He only eats a few roots and berries and drinks milk, and he was immediately, because he felt he had to say something because Srivas is the one who allowed him in. And Lord Chaitanya roared, became very angry. He says, do not think that simply by such austerities one can become qualified to see my kirtan. He told him, get out, leave this place. You are no qualification. He says, even if a sannyasi performs all kinds of austerities, do you think that is a qualification to see my kirtan? He says, whereas a person who's born in a dog eater, if he sincerely takes shelter at my lotus feet, then he can come, he can see my kirtan. So the qualification is that the person takes shelter. So the brahmachari, he was chastised by the Lord, and the Lord chastised it in the way the brahmachari was thinking, oh, the Lord is so kind and so merciful that I deserve much worse than this. And in his mind, he was just taking shelter of the Lord, and he immediately was leaving that place. And the Lord, as being as good as the all-pervasive super soul, immediately knew what was in the heart, that he took shelter of the Lord. He said, okay, stop. Now come back. Told him to come back, and then Lord Chaitanya placed his lotus foot right on his head and said, please do not ever think that simply by performing austerities one can actually achieve shelter of my lotus feet. One can actually become qualified to see my... This is not the criteria. It says only one who actually genuinely takes shelter of me in the way that you have done. And he accepted him as an associate, and then began the kirtan again. This is how the Lord accepts. This is his criteria for understanding who has something valuable and who has something which is worthless. So although it may appear to be very valuable, and although it may increase one's prestige and pride and position in society, in the eyes of the Lord it is all worthless. The greatest treasure in the eyes of the Lord is simply taking shelter of him and sincerely trying to please him. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, it is impossible to identify the characteristics of a Vaishnava by material sense perception or external symptoms. Servants of Lord Chaitanya may not have much wealth, may not gather many followers, may not have the academic qualification of being expert in argument and counter-argument, but ordinary people have no qualification to understand why they are indifferent to such matters. The devotees consider the service of Sri Chaitanya as superior to wealth, followers, and knowledge. Therefore, it is impossible for ordinary people to estimate their dignity, glories, and greatness. So this is a little bit about Kolavecha Shridhar. There's more. Anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a hard time understanding mood on this pastime where Lord says, okay, I'm not feeling ecstasy, get out of here. How about devotees who go outside and chant, and they don't say, oh, I'm not feeling ecstasy, you out, you know. And Lord Chaitanya is most merciful. He wouldn't give, in my understanding, mercy just to those who deserve it. He would just give to anyone, especially chanting of the holy name. He would want everyone to hear. Why
He hadn't inaugurated the Sankirtan mission yet.
Oh.
Before the Lord took Sankirtan into the streets, he comes by with his associates, and he specifically relishes with his associates and takes that experience of relishing with his associates out into the streets. So, and during that one continuous year, during the nocturnal kirtans at the house of Srivas Pandit, the Lord Chaitanya was specifically bringing together all his confidential associates who appeared to assist him in his Sankirtan Leela, bringing them all together and establishing in their hearts the highest Prem Sankirtan. Highest. Therefore, non-devotees were not allowed, but it's not that the Lord was excluding them. He was waiting for the right time. He was waiting for the right time to bring it out into the streets. First, he wanted to weave a net, right, by which he could capture everyone, and no one would shake loose. So he didn't want to disclose it yet, his purpose for his descent to the non-devotees, although he had every intention of giving them the ultimate gift of prema and engaging in prem sankirtan. So at this particular point in his lila, just like he told the pilgrim Brahmin, when he revealed to him this most beautiful form, when the pilgrim Brahmin was offering the rice, after the third time, Lord Caitanya came and took that rice, ate it, and the Brahmin wanted to cry out, and he told him, quiet, don't say anything. And he said, and then he revealed this most wonderful form. He said, don't reveal anything to anybody yet, keep it secret. I've come to fulfill my, if you fulfill my purposes too early, you'll be destroyed. And he said this on a few occasions, not just that one occasion. It's not the time. So that's why, at that particular time in his nocturnal kirtans in the house of Srivas Pandit, the Lord was simply reconfirming in the hearts of all of his associates who he was and preparing them to go out into the streets by allowing them to experience the Prem Sankirtan. So he was relishing, and by his relishing, the devotees, they're relishing, because they were all devotees. They were only concerned about his pleasure. So much so that when Srivas Pandit's own son died in the kirtan, during the kirtan, Srivas Pandit said to everyone present, don't you disturb his ecstasy. Kick out of your heart any grief that you may feel, because if the Lord experiences your grief, his ecstasy will be broken. So the devotees, they are the most confidential devotees who are bringing out the Lord's ecstasy, nourishing his ecstasy, and they were experiencing the highest ecstasy of Prem Sankirtan. Therefore, at that particular time, the Lord was just reconfirming his identity, reconfirming the mood of Prem Sankirtan, and then, when the time was right, he said, okay, let's all go out to the streets, and gave everyone. So it's not that it was a lack of compassion. The Lord understood exactly what he was doing according to time, place, and circumstance. And therefore, he was not allowing the non-devotees in that kirtan at that time. They would simply, for the same reason, when the students, when they started criticizing and blaspheming Lord Caitanya, right? He said, I have come to awaken love of God, but in the hearts of everyone. He said, but it's having the opposite result. People are criticizing me, that they're making fun of me. When the students were, when Lord Chaitanya was chanting the names of the gopis, he said, therefore, what's going to happen is if these non-devotees, they come and they see these things, they're going to criticize, and it will be worse for them. Better to not bring them in. Then, when he took sannyas, then he decided to take sannyas, and then when he started traveling throughout southern India, his associates accompanied him, and then everyone respected him, and everyone was delivered by him. That was the way he displayed his leela, his pastimes. So it was not lack of compassion that he was saying only my devotees are allowed. No, it was consideration of time, place, and circumstance. And we see again and again in Caitanya Bhagavat how Lord Chaitanya specifically established that point, that this is not the time yet. He didn't want these things to be disclosed too early, because he wanted to make sure first he got all these students who were accepting him as a teacher because of his being a great scholar, being very learned, being expert in debate. He wanted to capture them first. And then, after he captured them and got them as his students, then, at that point, he turned their hearts to Sankirtan, into the holy name of the Lord. Does that answer?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
In the beginning you mentioned that associates of the Lord, he brought them from spiritual world. Is it anywhere mentioned who Sridhar Kolavachidar was in spiritual world?
Excuse me. It's probably mentioned in the Goragana Dashtapika, but I just can't remember. Lord Chaitanya specifically said right here, he said that you are my servant life after life. You've offered to me, just as you're offering to me now, you've offered to me before, and I've accepted it. So it's clear he was an associate previously, but I don't remember his actual identity. It's just as he told the pilgrim Brahmin also. He told the pilgrim Brahmin who was offering the food, he said that previously you came to my palace, my father's palace in Nandagram, and you were offering, you were cooking, and I came and I accepted your food previously, and just as you did then, I'm doing the same thing now. He said, birth after birth, you've cooked for me, you prepared for me, and I've accepted your food, therefore I'm accepting now also. So many of these associates were associates in previous time, but I don't know who Sridhar was. Anything else? Let's have a short kirtan. Okay? We can stop.